I'm going to talk you through sort of my career as a designer. There's been lots of ups and lots of downs. I think to begin with, my earliest foray into the world of design was the House of Kirsty, which was set up aged 9 and wrapped up when I was 13. My mum recently dug all these things out of the attic. I'd forgotten that there are almost 2,000 designs here. So I think I'd considered a number of different careers, and I was all set to go and do biochemistry at university, and then decided I really wanted to go to art college. Started off in printed textiles, and then in weaving, and sort of discovered with weave that it was something to rein me in a little bit. I'm quite messy, I'm quite kind of, I'm not the typical weaver in many ways. So it was great to see that sort of system of threads and mathematics and colour. So I went to Duncan of Jordanson's School of Art and Design and studied weave there. I wasn't the most technical weaver. I got a 2-1. I wasn't the best person in my year at all in terms of marks and grades. But I decided that I really wanted to carry on and go to the Royal College of Art. And I have 2 more years really to sort of explore weaving in a different way than I had on my BA. So I did that. I had a fantastic 2 years with Philippa Watkins, who is my tutor over there, and sort of really got to grips, particularly with jacquard weaving, which was my first sort of real love, because it was the kind of perfect marriage between print and weave, which is always kind of where I've fitted. So I graduated from the Royal College and I started working freelance. So I worked with Louis Vuitton, Jaeger, people like that. At the time, I think I was struggling. I was doing lots of different jobs. So the first freelance job I had was with Jaeger. Was developing a paisley jacquard. And basically I did this in the local newsagents by running up and down and getting my designs to match up on the photocopier, which was there. So there was a bit of a kind of period of sort of struggling to kind of make it work and freelancing, working with lots of different people. I went to be interviewed for a job at Louis Vuitton in Paris, and this kind of whole process went on for about six months, actually, of going backwards and forwards, producing lots of different designs. And in the end, I didn't get the job. I think somebody else got the job. So that was a great big disappointment, I think, because I kind of thought this is the dream situation. So I was still kind of working bits of freelance, working in shops, working in pubs, doing all that kind of thing, keeping it going. I then met somebody called Guy Hills, who encouraged me to consider setting up a business with him. I was a little bit kind of unsure about this. I still thought my dream would be to kind of work in Paris as a sort of in a couture house, in women's wear primarily. But Guy kind of convinced me over a number of weeks that what we should do is set up a business together looking at tweed. And tweed was always something quite close to my heart. I'm from the Outer Hebrides. I grew up with weave sheds all around me, really, and was exposed to it from quite a young age. So I've always had a bit of an affinity with that. And I've always used tweed structures. I'm a bit of a queen of twill. So it sort of made sense to do that. And I think at the beginning, we were completely clueless. We had no clue about how to manufacture, about how we were going to multiply our designs. Started off with a loom in my sitting room in Hackney and just producing designs as and when. Then we thought I can't be sitting there hand weaving lengths and lengths of fabric, we need to try and work out how to produce these fabrics. I mean, really, our idea to begin with was the idea of kind of urban tweed, or the idea of heritage meets technology, looking at new yarns, new finishes, but within the matrix of a kind of traditional tweed idea. So as you can see, this is quite a literal sort of translation. It's based on kind of double yellow lines, the pavements, that kind of thing. So I guess it was taking the idea of country tweeds, which are used as camouflage, but using it in the place where we existed, which is London at the moment. The inspiration for the designs comes from a lot of different places. I think recently I've found out that I'm very happy to be in a mill archive. I think when you look at, say, this is spring, summer 1906, 1907, and you can see how huge that body of work is for that year. And I think it was very inspiring to look through archives and see the kind of colour and range and sort of mix of materials within archives. So I think that's something, you know, never to lift completely from archive, but also to have a bit of respect for kind of what's gone before and the excitement that's, you know, included in some of these designs. Also, we now design autumn, winter and spring, summer. So we work with the fashion calendar, the textiles calendar and the retail calendar. So it's an absolute nightmare of remembering whether I'm in spring, summer 17 for textiles, but in autumn, winter 16 for retail. It's just, it can be quite complicated. But I start off working probably very much like many of you do, from a set of inspiration. It could be an artist, it could be photography, it could be anything like that. So ideas for jacquards as well. So very much kind of still working in terms of initial research, photography, that kind of thing. It's one of our mood boards, I think spring, summer 15. Everything is designed in my studio in Dalston. It's a small studio. I have an arm loom in there, and I also have a table loom, and it's stuffed full of yarn. And once we've designed, that's the studio there. As you can see, it's not looking very orderly in that picture. But it's a really good place for me to work. I used to work from home, and that became quite nightmarish at times before Fashion Week, when there'd be all-nighters happening, and then my other half, whilst initially quite interested in the fact there were lots of people coming in and out of the house to help, then just thought, I can't deal with a loom going through the night. So moved to the studio, and it's kind of just, it's a great place to be. So some of Dashing Tweeds' designs. Early on for us, we kind of worked on this idea of Lumatwill, which was a merino cloth with a reflective yarn woven through, which isn't really a new idea. It's, I think the first instance of this was Flectron in the 60s. But I think Guy, being Guy, is a fantastic kind of PR and marketing person. I prefer to be slightly more in the background, doing the designing really for the fabric. But this became quite a success story for us and had quite a lot of press. So at the moment we're mainly working with merino, but we're working also with British wool. We're working with some fancy yarns, some silks and linens. So we're trying to kind of broaden the yarns that we work with, you know, as much as we can, although wool will always be the core of what we do. We're what's known as a converter, so we don't own any production, but we use various different mills around the country, and design the fabrics. The various different mills, I mean, we've been working with somebody called Robbie Trussler for years, Drove Weaving, which is a subsidiary of Lochcarron. And that's been really good for us because we've got to know each other. I think at the beginning, he thought, Kirsty, what on earth are you talking about? I can't understand any of your notation whatsoever. I've now learned how to write out a ticket in the way that he likes it to be written out, but I do know that every mill does their tickets in different ways, so it's like learning a number of languages. I think beginning to manufacture as a designer with no experience of manufacturing is probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. I think it's getting the relationships going with who you're working with, getting them to trust you and getting them to sort of understand that you want to make a go of this and it's not just a flash in the pan. So we work quite a lot with Harris. Often how I'll work with them is that they'll send down yarns to me and then I'll design fabrics on my loom and then send them back up for production. And it's quite close to me to do a bit of work in Harris because it's where I'm from. So this is Donald John Mackay of Luscantar Tweeds here and Andy Shepherd of Anderson and Shepherd and Catherine Hooker. So we went on a trip up to Harris. There was a TV programme called Tweed. It was a bit like a Tweed soap opera on BBC4. It's quite entertaining to watch it, if any of you ever get the chance. We also, I think that's Carlaway Mill. I guess one of the things about Harris yarn is the blend of colour. It's a rough sort of spun yarn, and it's I guess with Harris, once it's woven up and you kind of look at it, it just keeps on giving as a cloth. You get more and more and more. It might look blue or green from far away, but the more you look at it, the more kind of richness is there. So just some more pictures of our manufacturing, and I think it's quite interesting of all the mills that we've worked with. There's some who do work on kind of very old equipment. There's some who work on, extremely new and kind of not necessarily that one, technical equipment. And I think for us, it's really important to try and, for us, it's all about the sort of evolution of a fabric or the evolution of tweed. It's not about kind of replacing it with something technical, or it's about having an idea of heritage and history, but how can we make it relevant for today? And I think it's, as a designer, for me, it's really important that we're not making things that are a kind of view of rose-tinted times gone by, but we're looking at how we live now and what we have, how a fabric has to function now, and designing functionality and an aesthetic which fits with that. I think when I was a student, the last thing that I found interesting was going on mill trips. Now it's probably one of my favourite things in the world to do, and I get really excited every year when we go up and visit different mills. Now that I have more of an understanding of the equipment, of the machinery, of all the processes, I would just say to all of you, just really make the most of tomorrow and make the most of learning as much about manufacturing as you can. It's really important if you want to go on to start a company in which you will have to manufacture. So after our fabric is made and finished, we now do a small range of menswear and bespoke. Guy, as Guy is on top of the letterbox. And we've been working with a lot of Savile Row tailors. Our fabrics are very flamboyant. They're not to everybody's taste. But we have now got quite a kind of global market, and we send fabric off around the world every day to sort of tailors, other businesses, and work to commission as well on new designs. The menswear that we do, this is, I think it's based on a cavalry greatcoat, and it's got built-in body armour, and you can kind of see it's reflective, so it's for scooter riding. We do some kind of bespoke menswear and suits as well, cycle jackets, shoes. We've done a lot of collaborations recently, or over the years. So this is one with Harris Tweed and Hudson Shoes. This is something we did with Billionaire Boys Club, which is Pharrell Williams' label that he has with Nigo, a Japanese designer. So we did a reflective tweed with them, which was quite interesting to see it in this context, I think. We worked with Converse trainers a few years ago and did a co-branded range with them. They asked to come over and see our headquarters. At that point, the headquarters was my front room. So we were really, really worried about this team from Converse flying over from Boston. And then we thought we just have to kind of go with this because we can't do anything else. But they ended up finding that, I think the word was charming. So I should have dressed up in a tartan bonnet and done all that stuff as well. But yeah, it was a fantastic experience in the end. And, you know, there was a really good distribution of the trainers. It was great. We also did something with Topshop called Made in Britain, so it's all about British manufacturing. And I guess that's something for us which is very important. We manufacture everything in the UK and we have no plans to move that out. And I think we can do that because we're small and we're kind of niche and we're expensive. So for us, it works quite well. We do small runs of fabric, 60 metres, 120 metres. 500 metres is probably the most that we've done for a client. But this was an interesting thing with Topshop. I mean, there's a lot of kind of, well, no, I'm not going to say that actually. It's probably, yeah. We also did some work with Box Fresh. And for us, I think collaboration is a really sort of key thing. It's about getting our fabrics into unusual places. And the most recent project we've done is with Fred Perry, which is sort of out at the moment. And now we have a shop. So we opened a shop, 26 Sackville Street. And that's slow to start, doing well now. Going into retail is a completely different kind of ball game. But I think we're starting to pick up business. The other part of my work, well, one of the other parts of my work is a bit more under the radar. I work with fashion designers realising their ideas, and I work as a consultant on manufacturing sometimes with them, and I also produce hand-woven lengths of fabric. This is something we did with Henry Holland. This is Agnestine, who had conjunctivitis at the time, so had to be made an eye patch to wear on the catwalk. Actually, I'm pointing. Also worked a lot with Louise Gray over the years. She's now not doing catwalk shows, but again, this was really lovely for me because it's going back to jacquard. So these jacquards were a bit of a nightmare. We had I think I cried numerous times about this because it was just to get these made, changing tension constantly was a really bad idea, and something that I will never do again. And I learned a lot that you kind of really have to work within a mill's parameters and not just go in and think you can kind of do anything that you can on a hand loom. It's just not possible. This is something I did with Jonathan Saunders, and this was hand-woven, hand-cut upholstery sort of fabric. So we worked more. I think the making of the yarn took more time than the actual weaving of it. Holly Fulton. This is again hand-woven snakeskin, leather, wool, Swarovski crystal. And this was a job that I did with McQueen. I think it was autumn-winter 2011, and that again was a big killer. I think I stayed up for 4 nights in a row, sleeping 2-hour sessions in the morning. My dad came to stay with me and said, "What on earth are you doing? You're not a doctor or a paramedic. Why are you putting this amount of time into this?" But I think at the time I needed to do this job to raise the profile. I've also worked a lot with Aquascutum, reworking designs with them, working with various different mills, and Ardham and Hardy Amos. And recently I've been working with Mark Jacobs on hand-woven trim. So this business is very separate from Dashing Tweeds. It's my own business, which I've had very much under the radar, because you don't really get credited for this stuff. You're the hidden textile designer. And it's something that I don't really have a website for it, but it's sort of through word of mouth that this business has kind of grown over about 13 years. But it was a really fun job. It was just last season working on trims. The last thing is research. I'm heading up the woven textiles at the Royal College of Art at the moment, and working on a number of quite different research projects. I think woven textiles is a really broad church. There's so many different jobs you can do, whether it's fashion design, the trends industry, the interiors, manufacturing, CMF. There's just so much out there, and it's such a great skill to have. I've been working with scientists, nanotechnologists, architects and electrical engineers on a project which is about structural health monitoring systems for buildings. So we have the strain-sensitive carbon nanotube polymer. Where I come into this project is how it's woven, the structure this polymer is woven in, affects its performance. When we're all sitting in a room together, none of us understand what the hell anyone else is talking about. It's really interesting. But this is an ongoing research project, and it's something which will hopefully help. I think a lot of the time post-earthquake, post-bombing, it's unknown whether buildings are safe to re-inhabit. So this is something which can hopefully be retrofitted or built into kind of composites of the building. So that's an ongoing thing. Another project that I'm really interested in at the moment is this idea of the role of the textile designer, the hidden role of the textile designer, and the fact that we don't kind of almost sell ourselves in the way that we should do or shout about it enough. We kind of tend to be people in the background a lot of the time, and I think most of us are quite happy with that. But I think it's about time that we kind of caught up with food a little bit in a way, and that the general public and people at large understand a little bit more about how their fabrics are made and what goes into them and what the supply chains are. Also, I think working with fashion designers for such a long time, it's you are the hidden person. Do we want to, I think, is that fine, or should we be credited in the same way as a makeup artist or a hair person is in the fashion industry? Who knows? It's something we're looking at. Also, working, I think, as many people are, on a mapping system of kind of manufacturers in the UK. I think one of the things I found the hardest when I graduated was thinking, how do I even begin to manufacture? This is not a complete map by any stretch of the imagination. It's just an early version. So it's just looking at ways to make it easier for graduates to find the best people for their work to manufacture. And this is a kind of beginning of a project. with different academics across universities in London. I think that's it.